from Court Leader Raila Odinga, and it is in regards to the mass voter registration exercise. Remember that we're expecting a press briefing to happen in the next maybe few minutes at the IEBC as they give an update of the mass voter registration exercise that is now 9 days old. But let's go back to that press statement by Raila Odinga, and he is saying, and I'll read it in part, we have credible information that the National Intelligence Service is once again heavily involved in the ongoing voter registration with the aim of influencing results in August in the same way it did in the 2007 and 2013 elections. The statement then goes to say NIS interference in the current voter registration involves taking BVR kits to across our borders into Uganda and Ethiopia and assisting citizens of the two countries to register in a Kenyan election process. The agency is also assisting citizens of these neighboring countries to acquire Kenyan identification documents, then helping them cross into Kenya and register as voters. The NIS is also interfering with the voter registration process by having youths whose data were collected through the dubious National Youth Service exercise over the last few years and registering them as voters without their knowledge. It goes on to say the NIS-driven process is responsible for the multiple registrations, shared identity cards, and many cases of people in many cases of people who are captured as registered when indeed they had never done so. In the 2013 elections, NIS had its offices absorbed into the ranks of the IEBC as polling clerks and other strategic positions with the sole aim of helping Jubilee attain a dubious victory. In 2007, NIS was deeply involved in ballot staffing among other irregularities to help the PNU win. All right, that statement goes on to say NIS must let the IEBC do its work as an independent institution. The intelligence agency must equally operate as a politically non-partisan and independent institution whose duty is to safeguard the integrity of the electoral process and not interfere with it. It goes on to say it is a disgrace and a betrayal of the public trust when an institution that is supposed to safeguard the interests of the nation take the lead in undermining those very interests. Interfering with the process through which our country determines its leadership is one of the most serious crimes a public institution, and more so an intelligence agency, can be involved in. We wish to make it clear to the Director General of the NIS, Major General Philip Washira Kameru, and the entire leadership of the agency that this country will never accept another NIS-led electoral theft. NIS will break down this nation and send it to the dogs if it continues on its path of seeking to influence election results by way of fraud. All right, so that is part of the statement that has been sent to newsrooms by Court Leader Raila Odinga, of course, highlighting key issues that, link NIS to electoral fraud. But that, of course, these are allegations, and we'll be hearing what the IEBC indeed has to say about this. Remember, like I mentioned, they are scheduled to have a press briefing any moment now, and this is one of the questions that our Muremi Mwangi is going to be putting across to them. Muremi, thank you so much for joining us. So talk to us about this latest statement by Raila Odinga, and we're likely to see the IEBC officials, of course, taking it with the seriousness it deserves.
Good morning once again, Betty. Of course, that's an interesting part to the entire conversation on the ongoing mass voter registration exercise. Remember earlier, the opposition coalition had raised concerns with regard to what has been said to be multiple use of some IDs to register voters. But, of course, IEBC came out clearly and recently clarified that the person who had registered with the ID card, the same number that the said person that had registered shared with CORD principal Raila Odinga, that issue had been cleared and that the error in the registration system had been corrected. But of course, besides that, the fresh allegations by the opposition coalition could, of course, arouse a reaction from the Interior Ministry, which we understand will today also be having a meeting with the chiefs of the government of Kenya. But of course, for the IEBC, what we will be seeking to know is whether that complaint has been filed before them, and if they are aware of any such usage of the BVR kits to register non-Kenyans to vote in 2017. But of course, the IEBC has in the past said that the requisite documents for registration of new voters is their ID card or a passport. Therefore, if there is that alleged issuance of these documents to non-Kenyans, then perhaps that's a conversation that needs to go beyond even the IEBC into the Interior Ministry. And of course, we will be waiting to hear even from the Interior Ministry their take with regard to these allegations that are coming from the opposition coalition, Betty.
All right, let's talk about, because there are other issues really that have been brought forward in regards to this exercise. You've heard of double registration. What has the IEBC said before in regards to this issue since the whole process began?
Now, with regard to that particular case where a voter had registered allegedly the same ID card number of Raila Odinga, the IEBC singled that out as an error in the system which had been corrected. And of course, the IEBC has in the past said that for them, they are undertaking a mass voter registration exercise without any perception in mind as to who will be getting these numbers. And it's going to be interesting to try and understand how going forward, now that we are only 2 weeks to the close of that exercise, how the IEBC is going to reduce these errors, which in a big way seem to compromise what the opposition coalition has said is the integrity of the voters register. But of course, they have said that it was an error in the system which had been corrected pursuant to the request by the opposition coalition seeking clarification as to how the ID card registered under Raila Odinga had been used to register that particular voter. But of course, going into the mass voter registration exercise, this is one issue that the IEBC will definitely have to clear out of the way to safeguard the sanctity of the voters' register, Betty.
All right, let's talk about the image of the IEBC. I mean, you know, they're really battling with getting Kenyans to really have confidence in them and trust the whole process that they will be conducting. But what do these new claims really now do to this institution, especially considering that there is a new team that is just a few days old that is coming in?
Well, that was a question that has been, or that came up even at the time of the interviews for the various candidates that had applied to replace the Isaac Hassan-led team. But of course, at their swearing in, the Wafula Chebukati-led team gave a clarification that they will be foreseeing a free and fair general election. And part of the strategy that Chebukati raised before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, as at the time of his grilling, was timely and accurate and controlled flow of information from the IEBC. And therefore, we expect that going forward, that the IEBC will, of course, be giving timely accounts on various issues that are raised with regard to the process leading up to the 2017 elections, including these allegations that have been raised today with regard to the ongoing mass voter registration exercise. But of course, it is going to be an interesting time. He was asked about how he would ensure that there was, that unity in terms of operations of IEBC between the pre-existing secretariat and the new team of commissioners. And he said that part of what he and fellow commissioners will be seeking to do is to understand how much the secretariat has done as up until now. Perhaps